Two people eat the same number of calories today, same total, same energy in. But by tomorrow morning, one of them has burned through significantly more body fat than the other. Not because of exercise, not because of genetics, because of when and what they ate. That single difference rewired the hormonal environment inside their bodies, and it changed everything about where those calories went. If you have ever tracked every meal, hit your calorie target perfectly, and still watched that stubborn layer of fat refuse to move, this is the explanation no one gave you. The common belief is simple: calories in, calories out. Fasting and keto are just clever tricks to eat less, but that misses what is actually happening beneath your skin. Both methods work by pulling the same hormonal lever, insulin, but they pull it through completely different mechanisms. One depends on time, the other depends on fuel. They are not the same strategy. They do not create the same metabolic state. And choosing the wrong one for your body can mean weeks of effort with almost nothing to show for it. This is not diet culture opinion. This is metabolic physiology. We're going to compare intermittent fasting and keto head-to-head across 5 specific criteria: how each one initiates fat burning, speed of real measurable results, muscle preservation, hormonal effects, and long-term sustainability. By the end, you will understand which mechanism actually matches your body and your life, and why combining both at the same time can backfire in ways most people never see coming. Let us start with the first and most fundamental question. When you stop eating or when you cut carbs, what is the actual moment your body starts burning its own fat? Because most people get this wrong. Your body does not just flip into fat burning mode the second you skip breakfast or push away the bread. There is a gatekeeper, a single hormone standing between you and every gram of stored fat on your body: insulin. And until insulin drops below a specific threshold, your fat cells are locked shut, not slow, locked. So the real question is not whether fasting or keto burns fat, both do. The question is how fast each method gets insulin low enough to open those locks, and how long those locks stay open once they do. Your liver holds about 80 to 100 grams of glycogen. Think of it as a short-term fuel tank, a reserve of quick energy your body dips into before it ever touches your stored fat. Both intermittent fasting and keto work by draining that tank, but they drain it in completely different ways. With intermittent fasting, the clock does the work. You stop eating, and over the next 12 to 16 hours, your body steadily burns through that glycogen reserve, just keeping you alive. Once the tank runs dry, insulin drops below a critical threshold, roughly 25 to 30 microunits per milliliter, and your fat cells finally get the signal to open up and release fatty acids into the bloodstream. That process is called lipolysis, fat leaving storage to be burned as fuel. With keto, carbs do the work, or rather the absence of carbs. By keeping your daily carbohydrate intake below about 20 to 50 grams, you starve the glycogen tank of its only refill source. It takes longer, usually 2 to 4 days, but once that tank empties, the same insulin drop happens and fat cells unlock. Here is where the two methods split in a way most people never think about. Intermittent fasting fat burning is windowed. It only runs during the hours you are not eating. The moment you break your fast, insulin rises and lipolysis stops. Keto fat burning is continuous. Because your insulin stays low even when you eat, your fat cells stay open around the clock during meals, between meals, all day. And there is one more difference that matters. On keto, your liver starts converting those freed fatty acids into ketone bodies, an alternative fuel your brain and muscles can run on directly. On intermittent fasting, you rarely produce meaningful ketones unless your fast stretches past 20 to 24 hours. Most people doing a standard 16 and 8 fast never get there. And here is the part that catches people off guard. If you are doing 16 and 8 intermittent fasting, but eating high carb meals during your eating window, a big plate of pasta, a sugary drink, rice heavy dinners, your insulin stays elevated for hours after each meal. That means your actual fat burning window might only be 4 to 6 hours a day. You thought you were fasting for 16 hours. Your fat cells only noticed for 4. So which method gets you burning fat faster on the scale? Keto wins the first 2 weeks. It is not even close. But the reason is not what you think. Remember that glycogen tank you drained? Every single gram of glycogen holds on to about 3 grams of water. When keto empties the full tank, you lose 2 to 4 kilograms in just a few days. That is 4 to almost 9 pounds. It looks incredible on the scale. It feels like a miracle. But most of it is water, not fat. Intermittent fasting skips this illusion entirely. Because you refill glycogen during each eating window, you never get that dramatic water dump. Your weight drops slower, maybe 1/4 to 3/4 of a kilogram of actual fat per week. Less exciting on the scale. More honest in the mirror. Once keto adaptation kicks in, usually around week 3 or 4, something interesting happens. Your cells get efficient at burning ketones, fat oxidation rates climb, and the actual fat loss per week settles into a range that looks remarkably similar to intermittent fasting. Roughly 0.5 kilogram to 1 kilogram of real fat tissue per week. The early lead disappears. And if someone quits keto after those first 2 impressive weeks and goes back to eating carbs, the glycogen refills. The water comes back with it. Most of that lost weight returns within 48 hours. The scale giveth and the scale taketh away. Now the stakes shift from how fast you lose weight to what kind of weight you are losing. Because if the wrong tissue breaks down, you end up lighter, but weaker. And both methods carry that risk. When you fast for extended hours and your glycogen runs out, your body still needs glucose. Your brain demands it, so your liver starts a process called gluconeogenesis, building new glucose from whatever raw materials it can find. The closest available source, amino acids from your muscle tissue. Your body will break down its own muscle to feed its brain at a rate of about 60 to 75 grams of glucose per day. Keto handles this differently. Once you are fully adapted, ketone bodies, specifically one called beta-hydroxybutyrate, can supply 60 to 70% of your brain's energy needs directly. That slashes the demand for glucose. Less glucose demand means less reason to cannibalize muscle. This is keto's built-in muscle-sparing advantage, but here is the catch. That advantage only exists after full keto adaptation, which takes 2 to 4 weeks. During those transition weeks, before your body has learned to use ketones efficiently, muscle breakdown can actually be higher on keto than on intermittent fasting. Your body is stuck between 2 fuel systems, not yet good at burning ketones, but already cut off from carbs. It reaches for muscle protein to fill the gap. For both methods, the single most protective factor is protein intake. Somewhere between 1.6 and 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day. Hit that number, and your muscle loss drops dramatically on either protocol. Miss it, and no method will save your lean mass. Resistance training is the other non-negotiable. Without it, both methods cost you some muscle. With it, both methods can preserve almost all of it. The weight you lose stays fat. Beyond muscle, these 2 methods reshape your hormonal landscape in ways that go far deeper than insulin alone. During the fasting window of intermittent fasting, your pituitary gland releases a surge of growth hormone. Not a small bump, a 300 to 500% increase. Growth hormone does 2 things that matter here. It accelerates fat mobilization, pulling more fatty acids out of storage, and it protects muscle tissue from breakdown. This is one of the most powerful fat-burning signals your body produces, and it only fires when insulin is very low, which means it only fires during a real fast. Keto dieters who eat 3 meals a day, even perfectly low-carb meals, never trigger this spike. Their insulin stays low and stable, which is great for continuous fat burning. But the growth hormone surge requires the sharp contrast between fed and fasted states that only intermittent fasting creates. Keto has its own hidden card, though. By keeping insulin low across the full 24 hours, keto reduces your total daily insulin exposure by 30 to 50% compared to a standard diet. That sustained low insulin improves how your muscle cells respond to insulin over time, making them better at absorbing glucose when you eventually eat it. Intermittent fasting improves insulin sensitivity too, but primarily in the liver. Different target, different pathway, both valuable. The trade-off for keto shows up in your thyroid. Prolonged carbohydrate restriction can lower T3, your active thyroid hormone, by 10 to 20%. T3 sets your metabolic idle speed. Drop it, and your body burns slightly fewer calories at rest. Not a crisis, but a real factor over months. So each method hands you a metabolic weapon the other one does not have. Growth hormone surges from fasting, chronic low insulin from keto. This is where most people have the same logical thought. Why not do both? Stack intermittent fasting on top of keto. Get the growth hormone spikes and the continuous fat burning. Maximum restriction, maximum results. It sounds perfect on paper. In practice, it often backfires. When you combine severe carbohydrate restriction with extended fasting windows, you create a compounded stress signal. Your adrenal glands respond by pumping out cortisol. Some cortisol during a fast is normal and adaptive, but the double hit of no carbs and no food pushes cortisol past the helpful range and into destructive territory. Elevated cortisol does two things that directly sabotage your goal. First, it accelerates gluconeogenesis from muscle tissue. Your body starts tearing down muscle faster to make emergency glucose. Second, and this is the cruel part, chronically high cortisol increases insulin resistance and promotes visceral fat storage, the fat that wraps around your organs, the exact fat you were trying to lose. Some people who combine both methods actually gain abdominal fat in the first few weeks, even while the number on the scale drops. They are losing water and muscle while adding fat in the worst possible location. For someone already keto adapted, someone whose body has spent months efficiently running on ketones, the combination can work. Their cortisol response is blunted. Their cells know how to use the fuel. But for beginners, the dropout rate tells the story. Combined protocols see 60 to 70% of people quit within 4 weeks. Single method approaches, closer to 30 to 40%. The research points to a clear path. Pick one method, master it for 8 to 12 weeks. Let your body fully adapt. Then, and only then, consider layering in the other. So here is where you stand. Intermittent fasting and keto are not two versions of the same diet. They are two completely different metabolic interventions. One manipulates time to create windows where insulin drops and fat cells open. The other manipulates fuel to keep insulin low around the clock, forcing your body to run on its own stored energy continuously. They produce different hormonal cascades, different strengths, different vulnerabilities. And stacking them together before your body has adapted to either one does not double the results. It doubles the stress. The decision is simpler than the internet makes it. If controlling when you eat is easy, but restricting what you eat feels impossible, intermittent fasting is your lever. You get the growth hormone surges, the daily fat burning windows, and you eat whatever fits your goals during your feeding hours. If cutting carbs feels manageable, but going long stretches without food makes you miserable, keto is your lever. You get continuous fat access, ketone-fueled energy, and you eat when you want. Pick one. Commit to it for 8 to 12 weeks. Let your body fully adapt before you even think about adding the other. Remember those two people from the beginning? Same calories, different fat loss. Now you know exactly why. The calories were identical, but one person's insulin pattern kept their fat cells locked for 20 hours a day, while the other person's kept them open for 20. Same energy in, completely different hormonal instructions about what to do with it. Fat loss was never about eating less. It was about understanding which metabolic switch your body needs you to pull, and pulling it long enough for the biology to respond. That is not a diet. That is a decision you can actually make with your eyes open.